You're in
Yeah,
your prime, the biggest stat geek I know.
they defend at the best rate inside their 20s. So 15.5 tackles per try conceded. Fifth worst at getting to 20, but they're scoring at one of the highest rates in the league. So
Behind Newcastle, they're the worst team in efficiency in, say, scoring compared to their tackles inside 20.
hello and welcome back to Ahead of the Game. This time around, we're looking at stats, Stat Watch. It's a new segment here on Ahead of the Game with
You're in your
sports.
prime, son. I'm going to jump right in. You're in
Yeah.
your prime, the biggest stat geek I know, Mr. Ryan Tucker, living and loving life, turning our podcast into a show for geeks. Well done.
And obviously you can hear Sports Pez Jez here with the he has the opinion of stats that maybe a lot of people have out there. It's like, it's a number, just watch the game and you'll figure out
Bogan.
what team is better.
Bogan.
Glad that
Bogan
you
numbers.
said
That's it.
it. Now, Jez,
How many
what we
beers have
wanted
I
to
had?
get
That's
on.
how many numbers you need to know, right? So I had 6, 7. Had a few beers.
Well, six is not six is one beer. Didn't we
Yeah,
come?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Everyone's
Yeah.
seen that meme. 3 beers is 1 beer.
Yeah.
Couple of beers is 5 beers. And a
Yeah.
few beers, well, it's an all-nighter.
Yeah.
Check the clock.
Going for a few beers.
Call your missus at 2 a.m.
Going for a few more.
Yeah, that's right.
All
Anyway,
right, let's get
stats.
into some stats. Tackles inside 20 meters, Jez. It's a stat that it's been thrown around a lot in the media. We use it to some extent in the game previews that we do over at bets.com.au. And it's something that kind of divides the proper statisticians and the people that dive into stats, and also
The nerds.
the kind of bogans. Yeah.
Separates the bogans from the nerds.
But I want to hear. You tell me first your kind of thoughts on this statistic and what you think the power it holds in addressing or analyzing a game.
Yeah, well, I think superficially, probably the way that it's getting used on TV when you're obviously watching games and you see it come up. I think the first instance, for me at least, is okay. It's basically how much pressure, how much line pressure has a team been having. So that's sort of the first thing that comes to mind. Okay, well, how much have they been pushing and attacking the line? And then you can obviously take it another step in its simplicity and go, okay, well, how many points have they scored, or how good has that defense been to stop them from scoring? I think that's the black and white of it, especially live on television when you're watching. That's as simple as it gets. But then I think looking at it further, like we do, from a Bogan perspective, I guess, like, I don't know. You're working out, okay, well, how good is a team's attack? If they're getting a lot of tackles inside their opposition 20, but they're ranked last in scoring, okay, they've got some serious issues. And then I think you can look at it on the other end and go, okay, well, a team that's not getting many chances, is their attack better because they've got a lot more points? But I think this is where that sort of grey area comes into it, because you have teams, say traditionally like the Melbourne Storm, that don't get a lot of tackles inside the opposition 20, but score a lot of points, but they're not actually scoring those points from tackles, from the initiation of a play or a tackle inside the 20, because they're scoring from their own 20. So I think that's where it all gets a little bit muddled up, and where we've tried, and with a lot of your help, trying to work out, okay, well, how important is it, and how do we make it relevant or irrelevant when you see that stat initially?
I think you kind of hit that on the head a little bit there by, with any stat in any sport, just staring at one stat's not going to get you so far. You got to put it in context with a bunch of other stats. You got to cross them over and pull stuff out and pull stuff in and give them different weightings. And I think, as in it of itself, just as its own metric, It doesn't give you much information. But if you add in run meters, you add
Mm,
in points scored, points conceded, and obviously, your tries in there, I think it becomes much stronger because exactly to your point, you can see a team that builds pressure or has strong run meters. We take Newcastle as an example. They can allow a team to get an extremely large amount of run meters. I think they're ranked 15th in opposition run meters. Yeah, so they're allowing 1,546 run meters. Is the fifth ranked 15th in the league. So they're allowing
mm,
teams to just march up the park. They defend at the best rate inside their 20s. So 15.5 tackles per try conceded. And we know that
mhm,
they're one of the best defensive teams in the league in terms of points conceded. So what you can take out of that is that Newcastle's defense is centered around defending the try line, and they can absorb the pressure. They don't need to necessarily make sure that a team's not getting out of their 40 because they can trust their defense on the try line to repel constant attacks, which the
mm,
stats then, when you put those things together, say, okay, 15.5 tackles inside 20 per game, per try allowed, which is, it's double the amount of almost double the amount of half the teams in the league. So,
mm.
um, I think that's where you use the nuance and the grey area to try and put in some other stats that tell you more of a story.
Yeah, yeah, because I think like using Newcastle, they're the worst team in the comp, but they, like you said, you put them when you're looking at points conceded, they're second best in the comp.
Yeah.
So like it's crazy, and they're a shit side. Like in not to be too harsh, but they're absolutely struggling. And
Mm.
but then I think you put that into perspective of okay, well, how does that affect them though? Is maybe is that why their attack is so poor because they're spending all of this time defending their line, and then all of a sudden, and they're most likely then starting a lot of their sets from their own 10 meters, and then they've
Yeah.
got to work the ball out. Is that what the problem is? But then you look at their attack, they're ranked sixth in average tackles inside 20, but they're the worst scoring team in the comp. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, they need tackles. They need tackles to score points in their end, but they're doing so much work defensively
Mm.
that's how I guess we make this stat relevant in its like in the bigger picture of it all.
And I think like that connection that you made there between amount of tackles inside 20 and tries scored or points scored in total. We kind of coined the efficiency inside 20. You don't get a proper reading because we haven't just taken the tries scored inside the 20. It's all
Mm,
tries scored, but it gives you enough information to say, okay, these guys are getting to the 20, but then they fail because the
mm,
creativity in their attack is just not there. And that, you can get that just by watching the game. And,
mm,
so you don't need
mm,
a statistic to tell you that. But what it
mm,
can tell you in terms of maybe if you want to do tipping or betting or something like that is okay, well, if they're coming up against a team, let's just say Newcastle play Newcastle just in a statistical kind of matchup, then they're going to get inside 20, but they're not going to be able to score.
mm,
And they're going to be, if they'll have 26 tackles, but they score once every 15. So they're not even scoring 2 tries per game.
mm,
And then you kind of cross reference that against the defense, which is around the same amount, and they're going nowhere. So it gives you a really, I think, a good insight to the in attack, the creativity of a team, how well they once they get into position, can they convert their chances,
mm,
and um, in some aspects you can look at the tackles like we say in the Dolphins, or not the Dolphins, sorry, Melbourne Storm. Oh, they're also quite high. I thought they were a little bit lower, but they're getting in there at the fifth highest rate, so 26.3 tackles per game inside the 20 meters. but they're ranked 7th, so 9.4 tackles per try for them. I thought that stat would have been a little bit closer, but
I think it's switched there in the tackles inside 20. So I think that the looks like the higher numbers have the other ranking.
oh, okay, I've mucked up again. No, 37.9. Oh yeah, true. Yeah, okay.
Mm.
Now I get you. So
So it
they're
makes
fifth
sense.
worst, fifth
Mm.
worst at getting to 20, but they're scoring at one of the highest rates in the league. So
Yeah.
that's why I was surprised because I went to the Dolphins
Yeah.
first and it said fourth. I'm like, they're not
Yeah.
fourth. I can't anyway.
Mm.
um, yeah, so those two teams, we know that they're good at scoring from outside of the 40. Um, and
Mm.
even from inside their own half, especially this season, the Dolphins and Melbourne are extremely good at scoring from distance. And you can also see that if you compare the stats and you compare, okay, the Dolphins, the 13th ranked team in run meters, but they're still able to score points. They don't have a lot of tackles inside 20. So in terms of building pressure or coming up against a team that are very good at defending their try line, well, that doesn't matter because the Dolphins don't need to get to the try line to score
Mm.
a try. If your
Mm.
defense is bad in the field and you're allowing line breaks at a high rate, then you can
Yeah.
almost predict, okay, the Dolphins are going to score on you because they'll break your line 40 meters out, not
Yeah.
10 meters out.
Yeah. I think a good comparison there is use the Warriors, for example. The Warriors, they get tackled inside their opposition 20 the most of any team at 37.9. But they're a team that needs to build pressure because they're in tries compared to those tackles, they're the second least, yeah, behind Newcastle. They're the worst team in efficiency in, say, scoring compared to their tackles inside 20. So if you're a team that wants to beat the New Zealand Warriors, which has been tough this year, you need to make sure that you're winning that territory battle and you're winning this battle of 20-meter tackles because they need tackles to score, but they're also one of the best teams at creating territory and putting themselves in the position to score. And that's how they're winning. So they come up
Mm,
against the sides that can win this grind of forcing backs and win the territory and not allow them to come in to that attacking area. That's how you beat New Zealand, is keeping them out of that area because they
mm.
need it. They're not scoring a lot of tries from outside. They need to build pressure, build pressure, build pressure all the time. So I think that's a really interesting way to take it. They come up against teams that win that battle. They're going to struggle.
And as always with stats, you have some anomalies and some things that you just really can't explain. And one of them here, I think, is the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Now,
Mm.
they're them as a team this year, it's hard to explain. I think they've lost 3 games by 1 point or 1 or 2
Mm.
points. They could very well be a lot higher in the standings, but
Mm.
they have the second fewest tackles inside 20 meters of any team in the league. The Roosters have the fewest. And they're the two teams also with then the highest, if we call it the efficiency inside 20. So
Mm.
the Dragons score for every 7 tackles inside 20. And that's just because they don't get a lot of tackles. They're one of the worst
Yeah.
teams at creating territory and holding possession. So they don't
Mm.
get to the 20 very often. But they score tries and they have scored
Mm.
tries. So what you can take from that is if you look at a team that's maybe bad at defending territory, you can say, oh, well, if the Dragons can hold on to the ball in this game, then they're likely
Which is
to get
50-50.
it's 50,
Which is a
50.
flip of
Then
a coin heading into the
yeah.
game.
They can possibly get into a position because once they get into
Mm.
position, they'll score. They'll score
Yeah.
quite often. It's just
Yeah.
that they have trouble getting into position
Yeah.
compared to a team like you've said, like the Warriors. They'll get into position without a problem, but it just takes some time to work across that. And I think
Mm.
that's where you get the whole spectrum. You take everything to account. You look at the run meters, the tackles
Mm.
inside 20, the efficiency, points scored, and you can build a picture of, okay, how do these teams operate? Do they need to get
Mm.
into position? Can they score from afar? How are
Mm.
they defending their line? How are they
Mm.
defending the middle of the field? Do they know what have they built their structures around? And I think that
mm,
this stat then, when you put it all together and use the efficiency inside 20 like we do in the write ups, then
mm.
you get you get a better understanding of the structures of the game.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's something that we don't do enough in Australian sports is putting like attack against defense, a little bit like they do more simply in NFL, of course, because there's a an offensive team and a defensive team. But I think it's putting those matchups and finding the teams, okay, where this actually can be really relevant. If like we said, teams that are good at it and good at building territory and need territory to score going up against teams that give it away. All right, there's going to be some problems here, or they're a good matchup. They're a chance to score more points than what they usually do as their average, which gives you an edge in
Yeah.
when you're looking at the betting side of things or tipping for that matter.
Yeah. All right.
Mm,
Let's wrap it up there. We'll let us know in the comments if you want us to break down some other type of stat or correlation between stats. It's what I love doing. But I'm sure there's a lot
mm.
of stat heads out there that maybe disagree with what we're saying or agree or can give some shed some more light on this stat, and we'll pull out something more in the future. What do you
Yeah,
reckon, Jez?
absolutely. Just yeah, get in contact and let us know, and maybe you can even jump on a show.
Yeah. All right. Send us home,
Mm.
buddy.
All right. Just yeah. Now we're stat geeking. Absolutely. Hang with us and stay ahead of the game, of course.